Actually, give me 1 second. Okay, we'll get started with our meeting. We'll start with Commissioner around the table, and Commissioner Laird.
Welcome all of the young people that are here in the back. Thanks for coming. Some of you medium-aged people, and then some of you older people. Welcome all of you. There's a couple issues that I've talked to some other commissioners about that have been commissioners in the past and commissioners in other counties, because I was curious as to how they did things. But before I get to that, one thing that jumps out is there's a lot of people in the community that don't want us to grant any more horse racing licenses. They think we have enough of them. And they go into some detail about that. And legally, I'm not sure what we can do there, but I am hearing that quite a bit these days for some reason. And maybe you guys are too. The other thing is what I was told is, and we're kind of on the precipice of going into a new year, and one of the things these commissions have told me is that what they do is they circulate the positions on various boards, the liaison positions, and they found that to be to the advantage of the commission. I'd really like to see that myself, to have everybody get a turn at these different boards while they're on the commission. I think it's good for the commission to expand and grow as well as they can, and to give everybody a chance. Same thing with the chairmanship and the vice chairmanship. I think everybody should get a chance at that. It just seems like we're all elected under the same statutes and we have equal stature, and so I'd like you guys to think about that. It's always good to have everybody feel like they're contributing and that they understand the various issues of the county. And then the one thing I mentioned to the chairman before we came in was a thing that two things that I'm really concerned with. One is we've been stalled on finding out, getting an appraisal of all of our buildings and what kind of repairs they may need or additions they may need or what may be needed to make them operate efficiently, and we're not getting that done right now. And I keep saying the city of Casper did it. They hired a company that came in and did that, and they have a manual where they can look at all of the buildings. If we were sitting in here, we would have a estimate on what's wrong with the jail, this building, the Townsend building, the Hall of Justice building, all of our buildings, and what the cost may be to fix all of that, which would certainly help us in our budgeting processes. So I'd really like to see something done on that commencing in the new year. It's I think it's a well-rounded approach. The other one is I've said that I think we should have a person who works for us that's a county coordinator that can work with all the department heads and report to the commission. And I know the city does that. It's statutory. Ours isn't statutory, but we have the authority to do it. And it has been done in Natrona County before. And I have talked to a lot of our employees who seems to think it's a good idea to have a county manager or a county coordinator, because we're all part-time officials and we're not here all the time. And to have one person that can investigate matters with employment and all of that kind of thing, make the report to the commissioners, and the commissioners take the action. So I'd certainly like to see that considered and have a roundtable discussion about that to get a feeling of what you all think. I know these things, some of these things cost money, but I think sometimes you have to spend a little money to save money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I just want to point out that the group in the back's from the Boys and Girls Club. I went and did a presentation with them the other night, and they've been invited to come in here today to see how we take care of business in here. So welcome. And we'll move on to Commissioner North.
Jim, do you want to wait until to call up Kermit? And
We can do it now or wait till I start, whatever you want.
okay, well, let's go ahead and get it done. Kermit, would you and Nick come up?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to kind of jump in here real quick.
Good.
Kind of give a background of what we're doing, what we're about to talk about. We were tasked with and had a committee for the investment of some hospital funds that were pulled out of the WildStar 2 account that was dramatically losing funds. We put out an RFP for those funds to be managed. We received 4 different responses back. One was from out of state, didn't have a office, didn't have SEC accreditation with Wyoming or anything. That one was summarily put to the side at that point, not meeting the requirements of the FRP. We were left with First Interstate Bank, Peaks, and PFM. After the committee then took a look and reviewed all the documents that were given to us by those different groups, we came together, we discussed, and at that point, that's where we kicked out or didn't accept the proposal by the out-of-state. A question was developed by the committee, primarily by Kirby there, we wanted to compare apples to apples. The 3 emails that you have, or documents that you have before you, is based off that question. Basically, if they're given $50 million, we ask that they project the earnings, fees paid out quarterly, given the current Natrona County investment policy, and keeping in mind security, liquidity, long-term of up to 5 years, and then respond with no more than 3 benchmarks. They came back. These are their responses for that question. And unless Mr. North has, or Commissioner North has anything else to add, I'd turn it over to the treasurer and one of our key members of the committee. It was the committee's recommendation going through this that initially was to divide it out, not do what we did with WildStar 2 and place all the funds with one. After this question came back, we'd still prefer to put it out there, not in one lump sum, but in multiple but it was pretty much the recommendation of the committee to this board that we do 50/50, but I believe the treasurer may have a different viewpoint on that, and he'll speak to that as well, if you guys would go ahead and go. Unless Dave's got something.
The only thing I was going to add to that was that we did go through and we ranked each one of these, and it was a unanimous decision as far as the order that they came out with. So it was not just a few of us. We all agreed on which ones were the best selections, and that's where we move forward. And now we're just at the point where I'll turn it over to you two and let you discuss this a little bit.
So I'll just kind of summarize the process real quick. Do you want me to introduce myself? Is that protocol?
Yeah, if you would.
Kermit Willie. I'm president of First State Bank. 1638 South Elm is my address. I was asked to join this group to review RFPs regarding the disposition of the hospital funds that the county has received. We use a scoring system that has 6 factors: their expertise with public sector, technical expertise, adequacy of resources, whether or not they were local, the quality of their proposal, and then the fee broken down so that we could make sure that we were getting good management as well as a fair price. Each member of the committee ranked them 1 through 3, and each member of the committee basically came up with the same order. So everybody had received a fair shake at this, and independently, we all came up with the same answer. After we got those, we reached out to their references. Each one of them provided at least 3 references. I believe that every person that we reached out to provide a reference responded back. They were universally positive. So again, it became, a tight race between first, second, and third. We reached out with a second question, which was, given a portion of the funds, would your fee structure change? Give us a sample of investments that you would put the money into, and over what time frame, and what would the expected return be. Again, we got 3 very similar answers back. The outlier really being First Interstate Bank came back with a higher fee than they had quoted us on the first amount, which was a significantly higher dollar amount. So their fee had gone up a little bit. Both Peaks and PFM Asset Management maintained the fee that they had quoted us. In Peaks' case, that's 5 basis points per year. And in PFM Asset Management, it's a blended rate between, it's like 7 and 9. So at the 50 million mark or 50% mark, it comes out roughly 8 basis points. So between 8 and 5, it's a little bit different, but it's not markedly different. FIB was at 12. They came back at 15, 14. So they came back quite a bit higher. At that point in time, we kind of leaned toward doing this 50-50 between Peaks and PFM. The real difference between the two, they both follow our investment guidance, of course, because they have to, but one does a little bit longer term and does more in mortgage-backed securities and high-quality corporates. The other one pretty much sticks with liquid and shorter-term investments. We felt like the mix between the two provided some diversification and also kept the funds invested on a relatively short time period, so we didn't have a big risk of if rates went up in the future, we'd lose value in those. So that's the process that we used. We met several times and discussed it thoroughly. So that would be our recommendation. I'll turn it over to Nick.
I'll ask a question while he still has the microphone, Mr. Chairman. Kermit, when I look at this front page of this PFM asset management, it says down in the left-hand corner, not FDIC insured, no bank guarantee, and may lose value. That little flag is waving at me, and so could you explain that? And how, what,
Well, basically what they're saying is these are not deposits like a deposit at a bank. They are buying treasuries and corporate bonds that fit within our investment guidance. And if rates change and you're locked in for a long period of time, you'd say you're locked in at 5%, and then rates go up to 6% and 7%, and you want to get out of that bond before it matures, you lose a little principal to get out of it. If you hold it to maturity, you don't lose any principal and you still make your 5%. It's just what it takes into account for is the opportunity cost of having access to the funds and being able to roll them into a higher earning asset.
is this any different than that deal that they were in, where they lost the $3.5 million?
Yes, it is, because that was a very narrowly focused fund that was reliant on a few very large investors. And when other people wanted their money out, what happened was exactly that. And the same thing that's happened to several banks back in March, when rates started going up at a very rapid pace, they had gone out longer on the yield curve trying to get a little bit better interest rate. And then they're stuck with that. So they're sitting on a 2-year maturity at 1.5%, and suddenly rates have gone up to 5%, and they need the liquidity. The only way they can get out is to make up the opportunity difference between the 1.5% and the 5%. And that's basically what happened in that one.
Can that happen to us here?
I don't believe it can happen here because the amount of funds in these particular classes far exceed what was in that WyoStar or what?
Two, yeah.
WyoStar 2, yeah. These are, for instance, PFM is backed by U.S. Bank, and they trade multiple billions of dollars a day. So these are very big funds that they're in, and I would consider them very safe.
Do you have any conflicts with any of these banks, this U.S. Bank or any of those people?
I wouldn't say I have a conflict. With regard to First Interstate Bank, I disclosed that I was a former president there, but I have been on these same, or a committee very similar to this for the city. And we ultimately ended up choosing First Interstate. So I agree that if they thought it was a conflict, I wouldn't vote.
I'm talking about, do you have anything to do with U.S. Bank or any of those entities? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Kermit, for clarification, when did you leave First Interstate Bank?
March 17th, 2020.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and Kermit, just for again, reiteration, First Interstate is not actually the choice that this committee had selected, correct?
Correct.
Real quick, Nick, if you don't mind, can you give us the treasurer's opinion of what we should do?
I would think the treasurer's opinion would be 57 million to peaks and 40 million to PFM.
So not just a even 50-50 split, but
Right.
57 and then
And
40.
that is mainly based upon the lower fees of what 19,672 for peaks, and PFM was what 45,000 plus PFM, they invest in corporate bonds. I think they're riskier than government bonds that Peaks is proposing to invest in government bonds that are backed by the federal government.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for not putting together maybe a written, for the committee, a written a recommendation or anything. Due to time constraint and needing to move on this prior to, I believe, what was it, January 5th, I wanted to get this information to you as soon as possible. If you so desire, we can put something together and give the board or review on what, the second or something like that, whenever that comes up for the next one. But we're going to have to make an official decision at that point.
If you could, that'd give us an opportunity to make a decision on that date, so
Okay.
January
But
2nd.
if you would, take and keep these, review them, all four of you, 5 of us, and it'll give you a pretty good apples to apples.
Do you have projections, and that's the question to these guys, do you have projections of what we're going to make with this money?
That's very detailed.
I want to hear it from them.
Between now and December of 2024, it's 2.375 million.
On the whole entire 90 million?
Yeah, so actually, that was the answer for each 50 million, right?
That was 50 million.
So double that basically.
So what would that be total
That'd be 4.7.
that we would net?
Yes, and that actually is net of their 9 basis point fee and 5 basis point fee in the for peaks. So they're both projecting net portfolio yields of about 4.66% net.
Is that a good deal for us? Are better deals out there,
Well,
or?
I mean, given the rate environment that we're in, which is very unique because the yield curve is inverted, meaning short-term rates are higher than longer-term rates. So it's a unique position to be in. One of the things that they've done is when we ask them the second question, which was provide us a 5-year investment strategy, they have more than 50% maturing within the first 2 years. So that's a very short duration, provides us liquidity, keeps us from getting behind the 8 ball and needing that liquidity and have to, being forced to get out when we don't want to. And then it rolls from there. 20% matures in year 3, 15% in year 4, and only 11% in year 5. To me, that seems like a very conservative way to go. There could be an argument that we're missing out because as rates come down, we'll be reinvesting at a lower amount. But the inverse of that is more dangerous than that.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, just due to time, I was going to again reference these, take a look at them, see whatever. Nick and Karen, I hate to do this to you. Could I lean on you again a little bit to put that document together, because you know what you're talking about more so than I do?
Okay.
So for the recommendation for the committee. And then
And
just,
is the 50-40,
if you could take, yeah.
5740. Because we took the
5740
17 and put it on peak.
is the treasurer's advisement
that seems fine. with me.
recommendation. And then the committee's official recommendation though was 50-50, if you remember. So if you look at both of those and answer, put it out there like that our official one was 50-50, treasurer's 57-40, and then, and just send it to Michelle if you would, and then she can send it to all of us.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Nicholas.
yeah, I'd appreciate a written recommendation. I think for posterity, that's better, because we may forget and try to figure out what we did a year ago or 5 years ago, whatever the case may be. I am slightly interested in knowing what the committee's response is to the treasurer's suggestion of 57 and 40. And the treasurer's representative mentioned the corporate bonds being one of the investment products of PFM. If there's an upside, I think it's worth mentioning in your recommendation. But if we can square those between now and the second, I think it'd be helpful. And if the committee remains firm on, you know, on a 50-50 split, you know, I'd like to know that. But I'd like to know kind of the pros and cons of each, just, and it doesn't have to be long and involved, Kermit, but just kind of an overview of what the recommendation is.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, explain to me why you say wouldn't come to us with 10 different investments as opposed to a 50-50 split. This, all your money in one basket kind of bothers me. We've endured that one. So why would we go 50-50? Why wouldn't we go 25, 25, and 25 somewhere, or 10, 10, and 10?
Generally, the
Let him-
cost of
let him
management
answer.
goes up higher.
What?
Generally, as a percentage, the cost of them managing the funds is higher for smaller dollar amounts. That is why the First Interstate was giving us, I think they said like a 70% break on the normal fee that they would charge. Most people pay around 1.25% per year, so 125 basis points versus the 5 and the 8 that we're looking at here. So the higher amount of money that you allow somebody to manage, normally you can negotiate a lower price.
And do you think that outweighs the issue of a potential disaster with 50% of your money as opposed to disaster with 25% of your money? There's disasters in these investments that happen.
Commissioner Laird, remember, we only received 4 RFP responses. One was discounted. We
Yeah.
only have 3 choices.
Well, we have other choices if we decided to just have the treasurer invest in a government bond, don't we? He can do that.
We could disregard the RFP process if you'd like.
Well, I'm not disregarding, there's some questions I need to have answered. I'm not trying to argue with you guys. I just want to get it in my mind because it's a big deal to me.
The city did something very similar to that when they hired First Interstate as the custodian, and they hired D.A. Davidson to actually make the trades for them. And they got a low fee, not even as low as what we're talking about here, but they got a lower fee than they normally would have. The problem with doing it that way is the reporting that you get back is very complicated. They don't consolidate it down because that takes time and money. And that's one of the benefits you get here is good reporting and a good solid back office that is following the investment criteria that we put forward, but also coming up with recommendations based on what they're seeing in the market. And so we can do it ourselves one time right now and follow through, but it would be very, very complicated to have this many bonds and have staggered maturities and keep track of them. I mean, that's what we pay for.
Would it be reasonable to have the treasurer, say, take $5 million and buy government bonds with it?
Yes, or CDs. I mean, that's.
I mean, that
that's a
isn't
choice.
complicated for us, is it?
I mean, that's a choice.
And there's no fees to that. I'm just asking why, because I know what our treasurer says about some of these things, and so I'm just curious, tying that in with why they want to do the 57%, was it, and the 40-some percent. What
Part
is
of
the
that
reason?
part of that has to do with the fees are lower on peaks than they are on PFM by 3 basis points. So it's not nothing at the end of the year. The other thing, when we were looking at it as a group, the sample portfolio that PFM provided is 25% U.S. Treasuries right off the bat, 10% U.S. government agencies, 20% mortgage-backed securities. So again, they're not guaranteed, but they're secured. Commercial paper that's A or better, and then commercial notes that are A1 or better. These are all to get that kind of a rating, I mean, you've got to be very, very solid. So the likelihood of there being an actual credit issue is very minimal. In my mind, having the liquidity that both of these portfolios have shown is more important than maybe leaving 15 or 20 basis points on the table because we could have gotten something a little bit better. Plus, we'll be getting very good reporting. And all of the respondents, the references, have all used these people. They have access to the individuals that manage it. Direct access phone numbers. They're Johnny on the spot when we need answers. So,
I like the liquidity issue, but let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say that we find that we have to spend between $5 and $10 million on county buildings to get them in the right shape. I'm not sure what that number is, but I'm going to guess it's somewhere between there. Would we be better off taking $5 or $10 million and having the treasurer invest that in government bonds from the liquidity standpoint, getting the highest interest for 6 months, and rolling that around until we figure out what this commission is going to have to do to quit putting Band-Aids on everything and get everything fixed for real? Because that's what I'm looking at. That's one big issue for me.
So there's going to be liquidity built into this. So you will have your access to easily to that much money, possibly more.
And getting it out.
And still be,
Bond ladder
yeah, and still be getting,
from Peaks, the bond ladder, investment ladder.
and what's the other one?
Would we be getting as much interest if they invested it in these 6-month 5% bonds or whatever's available right now?
So Fed funds is currently at between 5.25 and 5.5. And then it's going to be going down next year at some point in time. The WIO class, I believe, is completely liquid, and that's one of peak investments.
And what's the interest rate on that right now?
5.3972 at the end of November.
I would ask that the committee put together the paperwork that we talked about, and we'll make sure it gets to the commission. They can review the documentation that we've been given to this point and get themselves educated on where they need to be at, and then we'll bring this back up on the January 2nd meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
thank you guys
thanks for,
a lot. Really appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
We will answer that liquidity question.
I know, this isn't easy. I'm just trying to
Is
get
this on the
it
same
in my mind. I'm not criticizing anything. I just want to know what's happening. All right.
I was just going to apologize that this took so,
No, you're fine.
but it luckily is on Dave's
I
time.
don't want to get too far behind, though. Dave, do you have anything else?
yes, I do.
Okay.
I forwarded an email to each one of you from, in reference to a threat that was presented out at the airport. And I'm not going to go into a lot of great detail because of the nature of it. But it does need to be reviewed and needs to be looked at and looked into because some of the procedures that were followed don't really, they don't meet the standard that they should, is probably the easiest way to put it. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in a public meeting, but I'll be happy to share any of that information offline with any of you.
Commissioner Mill.
Again, sorry about kind of hijacking the commissioner comments section. Yeah, so here a while ago in public forum, talked about getting the wildfire out and about for public comment. After further review, I have some qualms about it a little bit. I think it needs to be reviewed a little bit more at our level. Plus, I'd like to hear from the committee itself. One of the biggest parts or considerations I have on it that I think we need to review it is with it being an appendix of the zoning code, there is no enforcement mechanisms within that code to allow for fire marshal to cite on it. I believe if we are going to attach it to the zoning, we do need to have that mechanism within that code as well, or within, and then go from there. There's some other issues that I kind of, definitions and whatnot that I kind of have concerns about, such as, again, section 1, it talks about heavily vegetated areas, how that appendix applies there. I'd kind of like to see it apply to our Natrona County wildfire prevention plan, and it's got some different zones, and rather than apply the appendix to the county-wide, but focus more where that may come into play with the subdivisions and the residential area next to the wildland areas. So that would be my recommendation personally, is just hold off on it. We'll circle back, hear from the team, the committee, Dave's committee that put this together, everybody, and maybe get some clarification from the county attorney as far as like the enforcement mechanisms and how this integrates within the zoning code itself, if that's where it's wanting to live at.
Okay. Commissioner Nicholas.
Plenty to talk about, but I'm going to pass for today. I think that it's more pressing to stay somewhat on schedule, hear from the health department folks, and then from our elected officials who are going to, I think they're set for 3:15.
All right, I got one thing to cover, and I'm going to make this quick, so pass these down. I had a meeting with City Manager Napier from the city of Casper on Friday. During that conversation, this first page that you see here is the strip of land that runs in front of County Parks Building, Natrona County's maintenance department, and our fuel pumps where everybody fuels up. And it is labeled as being Mills. I was approached 3 months ago by the town of Mills saying that they were going to try and acquire that piece of land from the Wyoming Department of Transportation to potentially trade for the next two items that you see, the next two pictures that you see. One of them that is in the middle of an annexation right now with the city of Casper, that they're wanting their riverbank there, and the second one the city of Casper actually owns, and that's the riverbank they want. During that discussion, I brought up to the city of Mills that we didn't need them to acquire the land. That's something that we could do if we decided we wanted to. And it simply seems they're trying to acquire it so they had something to trade with the county itself. Since then, I thought that conversation was done because there would be no need for us to have them acquired on our behalf. They have approached the city, or somebody has approached the city and given them this documentation showing Mills trying to acquire having that piece of land. I've been in contact with the right-of-way division of the Wyoming Department of Transportation as of today down in Cheyenne. There's nothing down there. Potentially there's been a discussion locally, but they agree. They don't see any reason why Mills would want to acquire this when the county, if in fact wanted to, and we have our pumps on it, it would only make sense that we would. So bringing that to your attention in case something else comes further to this, I plan on looking into it a little bit further to see exactly what the deal is with the piece of land and why this is being presented to the city as Mills owning that land when in fact they don't. And that's being confirmed right now through a title search and a deed search.
Who owns it? Who owns it?
We're working on that right now.
Okay.
Title company's working on it. So, okay. So that's all I've got on that for right now. So we'll move on to the next order of business, which is the Natrona County Health Department and Anna Kinder.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, apparently analysts sit back there.
Get you another seat.
Mr. Chair, we are here essentially on behalf of the Executive Committee for the Health Department's new building. We have been in the process of the RFP process for a construction manager at risk for the project. We issued the RFP back in November. December 5th was the final date for anyone to submit proposals. There ultimately ended up being 6 construction companies that submitted proposals to be the CMAR on this project. We, as indicated in the letter I submitted, we shortlisted that down to 4 companies to actually interview for the project. There were 5 people on this interview team. Those happened last Wednesday. And at this point, we do have a recommendation for the commissioners to hire a CMAR, and that would be for Sampson Construction. It's a little more detailed in that letter and the documentation that was submitted, and Mr. Shank is here as your owner's rep for the project to get into a little more detail as to what the RFP entailed and how the process went. As a group, we felt that each one of the companies that interviewed were qualified and did well in their interviews, but ultimately everyone unanimously agreed on this for this particular project that Sampson Construction would be the best CMAR for the project. They do have several projects that they've completed within Natrona County itself, some similar terrain issues as this project with the piece of land that we have does have some issues with it that are going to have to be tackled just with the ground itself. One similar project that they had presented as far as groundwork goes is the YMCA. They completed that project. They've completed the build of Kelly Walsh High School. They just completed the tennis courts for the school district and the Natrona County pool, Natrona County High School pool. So they do have a pretty extensive list of projects they've completed within this community. They also have a project manager and other team members that are members of the community itself. So I think it's kind of almost like a home-based project for at least several of the main members of the team. On the agenda for tonight, commissioners, we do have it listed for you to discuss in further detail if you choose to discuss in further detail at that time, but also vote as to whether you would like to move forward with and hire Sampson Construction as the CMAR for this project. That will need to be voted on tonight, obviously, as this is a work session. But that's where we are at in this project. I think the team consisted of several qualified members. We for the interview team itself, Mr. Shank has extensive experience, and then Brandon Daigle with MOA Architecture, our architect on the project, was also involved in the interview process. So I think we have a lot of experience, and I think this is the right move for the county, the best interest of the county. Mr. Shank can get into the numbers a little bit more. Of the 4 groups that we interviewed, they were the second lowest in cost. So they weren't overall the lowest, but I think they were fairly close in their actual numbers. But even with that not being the lowest, I think they're still the best for this project.
Okay, thank you. So I think Mr. Holbrook covered it, the history of it pretty well. Just to give you a sense, this was the RFP that we sent out that they had to respond to. So there's a lot of information in there, including our federal government requirements because of some of the funding that we have. Included in that proposal, we asked them to provide their CMAR fees and general conditions information, which they all did. Those were documented after the conclusion of the 6 that did respond. And Sampson Construction was second from a number standpoint if you just looked at it in generalities. But their percentages on all their insurances, their bonding requirements were all very good, very low. So there was give and take amongst all 4 parties. The 4th interviewee that we had was rather high, but they're a very qualified firm, so we decided we should bring them in and talk with them as part of the presentation. So, I mean, I can go through the numbers if you like, or I can talk more about the process and the reasoning as we got into more detail in the interview proposal or presentations themselves. I guess just to say between first and second, in our minds, Sampson Construction came in by everyone's thoughts and scoring on the rubrics that we included in the RFP. Number one, they were very strong in how they approached the project. As Mr. Holbrook mentioned, they do have 3 of their main individuals that will be involved in this project live in the community, and they will be dedicated to this project 100% starting if they're signed up under contract. They'll be involved from here on out to be their only project that they're working on. And in fact, just a little side note there, we just signed a certificate of substantial completion for the new courts facility in Douglas today for Converse, which Sampson built. And so that really pushes a lot of their paperwork and issues to deal with to wrap that project up down the road, and most of that's completed, so they will be free to begin movement on this right away if we so move forward. One of the things, well, a couple of the things that we really saw that were strong in their presentation, they have pre-construction services people, which is the first part of this process. Construction manager at risk is actually a 2-piece agreement. First part is professional services, where they assist in pricing, coordination, value engineering with the design team, and making recommendations of where they see how there can be areas to save money and not affect the overall design of the project. They had pushed into that pretty hard already based on the documents that we provided all of the proposers, and they had some very good suggestions. We didn't go through all of them, but they had quite a few that we all felt were definitely worth looking at, that were not going to affect the outcome of the building nor its design. They also took a hard look at the site because it is a complicated site. It doesn't look like has that much grade change if you just drive by, but from east to west, there's 20-some feet in elevation change that we're going to have to take out about 45,000 cubic yards of material to get it down to where it's a flat enough site that we can make everything fit in roughly, 9 acres, I think, 8 to 9 acres. And so they had spent a lot of time evaluating that. They went through that in great detail with us. I think it was very helpful for the other members of the selection committee to see that process and to hear them talk about how they would approach that. So that was definitely a real plus for them. And they also have on their team a medical specialist, because Sampson has done a lot of medical work. Even though this isn't a true medical building, we still have exam rooms and associated things that tie to that. And they want to have that involvement up front to assure that we're looking at everything correctly from their standpoint, from what they've seen on other projects that are similar nature that they've been involved with. So overall, I think they really shone above the other 3, and everyone was very pleased and felt comfortable with the people that we're going to be working with for the next 2.5 years if the project moves forward and they stay as the actual construction portion, which is part 2 of that agreement, once the guaranteed maximum price is finalized.
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 short questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Are you recommending this? We
Yes.
hire them?
Yes.
That answers my first question. The second one is, do you think we should look for a different site that's flat?
Well, you certainly could, but I think you have some time constraints with some of these dollars, federal monies that have to be spent by, I think it's 25, yes. And so that could push things back and maybe create some problems with those funding dollars. I think it's definitely a viable site. It certainly has some additional costs to it that no one had initially anticipated because of both soil conditions and the amount of material that has to be removed. But I think the location really is a prime location because it's got you in that kind of core that we have in downtown Casper on the east end of downtown. And I think there are some advantages to that as its placement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nick Lacy.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. As the commission knows, I am part of the executive building committee. I was not part of the selection committee, mostly because of time constraints. But we had met before and after the interviews, and of course, I'm familiar with Sampson. I appreciate that they looked into the site characteristics as early as they did, because we expect that the site the characteristics to result in substantial costs to do that dirt work, as Tim was mentioning. So that's good, and maybe they'll be in a position to help us save some dollars. I think the request is, the recommendation, and the request is that we make a decision tonight. That's right?
That's correct, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Nicholas. Yes, we would like to have them selected tonight and then have a contract presented to you for signature at the January 2nd meeting, so they can be on board as quick as possible. We did push back just by a month or two the finalization of the schematic design process to finish reconciling some of the numbers involved with that, and the CMAR would be involved in that, and we can help having them on board quicker will help get that moving.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, Tim and Jared. On the proposal tabulation, we see the total fee, including pre-con services, but it's also highlighted near the top center of that page, all costs based on guaranteed maximum price of $24.2 million. I think that, the indications are that we might be in excess of that amount. Does their fee go up? Is it a percentage-based fee, or are we locked in here at the one presented on line 4A?
We didn't have that discussion if the pricing changed or costs increased, but I would think that they would probably be amenable to keeping their fees at where they're at, but that's a question we would certainly ask right up front. Because we used the number that we had at the time that the proposal went out to them.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Kids are ready, glad to get out of here.
All right, we can move on to the elected officers. I guess we'll just start at the top of the list. So, Jill, we'll start with you. Okay.
Jim. Go right ahead.
Between you guys, you got 4 million votes.
The treasurer's office is not here, I guess.
Tom's sick.
If Jill's not gonna speak, I'll step up. I'm not afraid of you guys. Jeez.
Do you need my notes?
No, I don't need your notes.
Yeah, explain why we're here.
We're here because we've been meeting as elected officials, I don't know, since first summer maybe, on a monthly basis, and recently invited the commissioners to those meetings that we have. And this being kind of the end process or the end product of, we decided that we'd like to probably quarterly, as a group or whatever, come in and basically give updates to the commissioners as to what's going on in our areas, information that maybe, you know, you're not getting because, you know, you got a lot to do. And also invite you to the meetings that we do have. We're doing it on a informal basis as a communication conduit, so that we don't, you know, fall under the meeting rules. We're not making decisions, we're not doing anything like that, but
Switching departments. So everybody can see each other's offices.
yeah, and we're, each elected is basically hosting it on different months so that,
We can educate.
educate about what's going on in our areas, and people can see the facilities that obviously you're funding and what's going on in them. And, yeah, just kind of create a cohesive group amongst the electeds themselves.
Open communication.
Why don't you just talk, Jill?
She is. She's a nice cadence. She is. I'm just helping you. Open the door.
Yeah, in the end run, this is something that we wanted to carry forward, you know, almost on a permanent basis. I know that in the past, at least I have done something similar, but just by myself, coming in and updating commissioners on what's going on in the county and the way of the coroner's world and what's going on, you know, and other elected as well. But we just kind of wanted to do it as a group, as a team.
We thought we
And
could update on upcoming legislation, so everybody's informed
just kind of an open
to
forum
support.
of communication, and so that we're all in the same loop on what's going on throughout the county, not just in one specific area, so.
I agree. I think it's a great idea. Although I don't want to come out to your office because that's like, I only want to visit that
I had
once.
donuts and all kinds of stuff, come on. it's very
Yes,
nice.
you did.
And then I guess the back end of this was us, literally just giving you kind of update of what's going on. And then, like I said, maybe carrying it forward if it's an open invitation on the monthly deal, but maybe once a quarter. And Dave was the one that kind of suggested us holding it in a work session where, whether it's just us or us and the department heads or however that works, kind of getting in and getting the skinny that we wouldn't get otherwise, and giving input to things that come up that we don't know about a lot of times till after the fact, but kind of giving that heads up, just a communication conduit, so.
Well, I like the idea. I mean, that's kind of what we started with, bringing our department heads in and having meetings every 2 weeks. And the chair and vice chair always rotate so that we can bring other commissioners into the meeting so everybody's in the loop of what's going on in different areas and making sure that everybody's well informed up here of what's happening across the board. So I love the idea.
Mr. Chairman, this time, I know I said I wouldn't talk, but Dave shared the minutes from your last meeting, which, you know, I mean, we don't obviously necessarily need to attend the meeting, but there are things that are issues or topics that are coming up that do ultimately affect our offices as well. So it's nice to have a heads up as to what the conversation was. So we appreciate Dave doing that and would ask that you guys continue to forward us those minutes if you would be so inclined.
Out of department head? Okay, yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. I normally made sure they were out to commissioners, but yeah, we'll make sure all electeds get it. Because you're right, there are a lot of things that we talk about that, well, I look at you, Sheriff, there's a lot of times that we discuss maintenance of the jail, and there's things that come out of that that would be very beneficial to you being aware of, so absolutely.
Anyone else? That's really all I had. Jim,
Well, I'll give my update,
you'll give update,
and
okay?
then somebody else will take the chair.
Sure.
Did you have something, Michelle, real quick?
Every 3 months, every 4 months. Because I can get that going like tomorrow. And you guys will know when your schedule is a year in advance. What's the opinion of the board on that question?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, quarterly, every 3 months, I think that we absolutely have somebody in there, and I think that I would leave it to whoever ends up being chair or vice chair next year to make a decision as to who goes, but I would like to see that rotated so that all commissioners end up being involved in those meetings at some point in time, but I think we leave that for the new chair and vice chair to make that decision.
We'll have our elected official meetings, every month that you guys are welcome to come to, but as far as the update for the commission on a quarterly basis, that good for you all.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Part of it, why I haven't attended is because I had that hesitancy. I don't want to show up and have 2 other people there and then all of a sudden it's a meeting. So I think if we want to start or if anybody's going to attend the monthly meeting with y'all, then just give the rest of us a heads up that you're going to be there so that somebody doesn't drive out to Jim's place and end up having to come back.
Well, Jim, I'd almost prefer to do it like we're doing now, Michelle, is just rotate it. We have a calendar set up that, it might be Dave and Dallas one week, and then you and myself the next week, and then Dave and Peter the next or whatever. So we could set that up to where we know whose time it is and make sure they're there for it.
We only have them go an hour. They're not
Okay.
extremely long. Yes. They go really
So just to clarify, you have a monthly meeting, but then you're also talking about coming here and doing an update quarterly. Right. So the quarterly update on our grid so that we know that, and then we can rotate monthly to whoever wants to come. So.
All right, well, as far as the coroner's office, so far since probably June, when we really last met and discussed some of the projects and stuff that you were funding going forward, this year, so far we've become accredited this year, which was a pretty big deal in my world. And then we've had several projects as far as the facility, completely did a complete revamp on IT out there with the changeover to Office 365, new computers. We put in new cyber locks and camera systems out there that all tie together with the sheriff's office and Jill's facility, all as kind of one big group type of deal, which was pretty neat. We are in full swing in completing the digitization process out there of all the old records. Took us quite a while to get hooked up with the Wyoming archives and get that all looped in correctly, but we're going full bore right now, and we'll literally be paperless probably before the next budget session. We'll have that completely done all the way back as far as we can find those records. We'll either be
in our cloud system, or it will be within the Wyoming archives that can be accessed by me because they're not actually public records. But in any case, we'll be able to get rid of all that paper that was in that land van and came out of the courthouse and everything else, and be completely digital, which will be pretty neat. We're in the middle of getting and implementing a fingerprint scanning system. And we just completed the whole legal stuff behind that as far as the new statutes in the country on coroners and medical examiners having access to the FBI systems and all that kind of stuff. And our office is fully involved in that. We've purchased through the Wyoming or the Central Wyoming Healthcare Coalition a fingerprint scanner that will be used, or that they'll actually own as part of that coalition for mass casualty type events. But we'll be using it that we'll use to scan every decedent's fingerprints there and be able to have them on file for identity purposes and that kind of stuff. And so that's full in the running. So also working with legal right now on developing a policy for after disposition indigent stuff for the county. And we're pretty far along. I just met with Lita this morning on looking at the wording and some of the policy and that kind of stuff, and that'll get put toward you since that's kind of your program anyway. But having an actual policy in the county that says this is how it's done, this is who handles it, this is the financials of it, the whole 9 yards. So
I had a question. What do you mean by indigent stuff?
okay, so right now I manage the indigent cases that come through where the county pays for that disposition, whether it be cremation or burial. And we talked about this before, you know, whether we were going to get a plot in the cemetery or, you know, how that whole thing works. That program, Dallas, belongs to this board, and it doesn't belong to me. But I'm currently managing that, and part of that is getting some sort of policy or something in place that outlines that for the future. Because state statute stops at a certain point once disposition of the decedent is made and doesn't give direction beyond that point, it's left up to us. And so I'm trying to help you folks in putting something forward. If I'm, number one, going to continue to manage it, but number two, having something going forward that says, you know, in lack of state statute, this is what Natrona County is going to do for that. And when I talk about the disposition, it's once we've taken somebody and accepted it as an indigent case, in other words, they had no family, they were unclaimed by the family, or truly had no next of kin or assets for their disposition, the county takes care of that. As part of that, we end up with the remains, which are now out on shelves in my office. And going forward, you know, so that we don't end up in a situation 10 years from now with 200 sets of remains sitting out this office and no direction as to what to do with them. That's what we're working on now. What are we going to do with those people? Are we going to have a county cemetery where these people get buried, kind of like Fremont County does? Are we going to have a place where we go out and spread them after a certain amount of time? That kind of stuff, so that we don't end up in a situation, we end up with hundreds of sets of remains and no direction as to what we're going to do. That, like I said, is being currently worked through legal. I'm running out of time. All right. So, yeah, any other questions? I could update you kind of where we're sitting on stats for the year, which right now, caseload, we're about 15% up above last year. And with that, we're still going to make budget. So that's all good.
Question.
Commissioner Laird.
You know, what's really interesting for me is last night I woke up thinking about this, and I didn't realize you were coming here to talk about it. This remains thing has bothered me since the last time we talked about it. But I like the idea of what Fremont County does. Gets me in tears to think that people would say that Natrona County just takes these people and burns them and throws them in a bag and sticks them in a van out by your office. I don't like that at all. I don't think any of our pastors in this town would like that. I think they would like to have it where they can come and say a few words over the person. I think the dignity of those of us who are alive should do that.
And I'm in total agreement with you, and this is why we need to have something. We need to have something that tells me what you folks want to do with these people. Like you said, Fremont County, they have basically a plot of land that's county land. And when it comes down to that piece of the process, if they end up with those remains, you know, to me, it's not the best of all worlds because they basically put them in the ground with a name marker on it, and that's where it is. But at least they're not sitting on the
You
shelf.
can find them, you can
Yeah.
number them.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
It's coming up. I'll go last. I'll keep the timer going.
All right.
I'll wrap it up.
Tammy Salzberg, assessor. Update for our office is all this year I've been working on the people who have not had any time for classes or certification. So for 2024, I will have 3 new employees temporarily certified and 3 more who will be permanently certified for education, and that will continue through the next years. We are now sending out our personal property renditions. They were mailed today, along with approximately 1,800 new licenses that we mailed out to for reporting. I also sent out letters for taxpayers that require present worth approach or income approach and a cost of development for their properties that are in subdivisions that aren't being developed. Basically, it's just raw land, but because they're in a subdivision, they cost out tremendously. So those went out to all those taxpayers. I do have a meeting with the Department of Revenue on January 3rd that proposes a percent of, it can only go up so much, that will probably pass and be implemented for 24, but as far as more details, I don't know.
Do you know
What's that?
what the percentage is that they're looking at,
It's
right?
up
Because
to
I've
5%
I've
so
heard-
far.
yeah, I've
and
heard
was
different
that as
things.
Since the last email I got.
okay.
The governor did approve the tax refund program, so I'm sure that's going to be another part of hopefully helping out. And I'm under the assumption that they changed the qualifications again or added more money. I'm not real sure on that. So hopefully more can get on that program. Other than that, we'll be calling up you guys and everyone else who's part of the appeals. So we'll be heading into a new appeal season. So we're just going to be working on revising, updating, and re-stratification has already begun and analysis running. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Nicolason?
Thank you, Madam Assessor. Thanks for the update. Has DOR given you any guidance on lack of legal access to parcels and what that should look like? I know your office was considering, the can of worms that is. And I just didn't know if you had an update or if you had any.
They have not said anything. Honestly, I think their focus has been on this tax issue and implementing that, but, I will make a note and double check to see, because they will be coming up here in January.
It might be a good time to ask them, we talk about practical access, but really legal access, I think is the key. The other thing is, we as a county have an opportunity to have our own refund program for, people in need that qualify. And I know some other counties have done that, and I know some seem to be wealthier than what I perceive to be Natrona County to be. But do you have any ideas what a typical county-led refund program is? Is that $1 million? Is that, because there's an allocation that I don't believe is reimbursed by the state. So it's directly out of our budget. Do you have any sense of how many other counties are doing it and how much they're putting into their own program, or if most of them are just relying on the state's program?
I don't, but I can find out from each one of those counties.
I think it would be useful to the commission this coming year and specifically budget cycle to have a little more information on that so we can make an informed decision on whether or not it works. It seems like if we don't have your office or the treasurer's office or our office trying to manage who qualifies, and we can rely on the state to do that, to pre-qualify people, then we don't have to get, into stuff we might not have any experience in doing, looking at tax returns or whatever. But I'd like a little more information on that so we can see if that's something that the county can afford to do next year.
Okay,
Thanks.
yeah, I can look into
Tammy,
that.
right along that line, and I don't know if you're working with any of the legislators or not, but part of the problem with that program is that the county bore the entire cost of that. So the school districts weren't even though they're a big percentage of that, the county was actually one that took that entire hit. The city didn't have to pitch back in or anything else. It was the county. And so I don't know if we need to look at seeing if we can get that spread out across everybody that's collecting those funds instead of just the county taking the hit. I think it would be a lot more amenable if everybody takes part of that loss instead of just the county itself. That's been the problem that we've had in the past, is that we're the ones that bear the entire cost of that.
Okay, yeah, I can
So-
definitely find out.
Okay, appreciate it. And if you need,
I know Teton County is one, and is Park County maybe? I can't remember.
Converse County did, but
Did they?
both of them have
Okay.
a pretty substantial reserve.
Yes, I can find that out and let you know.
Commissioner Milne, did you have something? Good. Okay,
Is that it? All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners,
Michelle, Mr. Chairman, can you start the 5 minutes?
it'll be less. I guess first off, I'm just one employee down in my title department, so that's a never ending issue there. We're gonna wait till after the first of the year to put it back on Indeed and the website and see what we can get. That's always my department that is short-staffed because of the challenges that they face daily. Next thing coming up, probably fairly quickly or soon, there will be an MOU with the Secretary of State's office coming through for the use of the Wild Ridge e-poll books that we used, or Natrona County used in 2022. It's an electronic poll book system. I used it at my consolidated location at the fairgrounds and Restoration Church prior, and it's tied into our statewide voter registration system, so it's real time, which is nice because if someone is a felon or non-citizen, it'll bring them up right now, and it goes through all the HAVA checks, DCI, all of those checks. So it's a very nice system. Helps kind of cut down on some of those issues that we can face with paper poll books. Like I said, Natrona County, Teton, and Fremont were the three pilot counties that did this in 2022. We were all involved extensively with the implementation and training and building this program. So then the state has rolled it out to all the other counties. And as far as I know, right now, it's just Albany County is going to jump in with us. Part of the reason is because there's an on-site support portion of it that is required in this MOU, and it's going to cost over $8,000 for an election cycle. So some of these counties, obviously these smaller counties, can't afford that. And also another thing that you have to have with these e-poll books is huge IT support. I mean, it takes up our county IT, takes a lot of their time, a lot of effort. There's a lot of security protocols in place, and I could not do it without them. They are outstanding, and that's the only reason we were able to do this at all. So their support means it just makes this project happen. I think other than that, that's about all I have. Of course, elections is going to be challenging this year, but that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. I'll keep it brief. We've got a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of things going on, and I'll give you, in the interest of time, maybe the 100,000-foot view of a couple things that are on the radar, projects that I'm looking at, kind of as we move forward. So back in 2021, I launched an initiative to bring some training and programming into the jail to reduce recidivism with some of our high needs inmates. That project is coming along well. So it's really a couple different phases. One is reentry training prior to them getting out. Another one is kind of midstream programming, and you'll probably see a contract coming before you in the next month for a pilot program that I'm interested in exploring, and it has to do with expanding our counseling services to provide some substance abuse treatment. And this pilot project is already funded in my budget. We just need to enter into the agreement for services with our counseling provider. So basically, he expands what he's doing a little bit, and essentially, it's every other month from January through June. So that way, I can get a good look at how that pilot project kind of develops and if it's where we want to continue going. So the overall look at that is to reduce recidivism and kind of break the cycle of some of these repeat offenders that are just coming in and in and in and in all the time. So we're seeing some good data come out of that so far. Kind of same topic. Last few years, I've been probably eyeball deep in the conversation with the Wyoming Supreme Court about diversion courts. They are starting the pilot project up in Campbell County. And we're probably going to be bringing diversion court to Natrona County as well. There's no set time that the pilot project in Campbell County has to run before it comes here. So hopefully we can look at the implementation, get some of the bugs worked out, and then just jump on board and bring that in here. But kind of been working hand in hand with Chief Justice Fox to get that brought into Natrona County. Also started on some of the preliminary conversations with the director for the Wyoming Department of Health on a telepsychiatry pilot program that we'd like to bring into the jail. And really this is specific to the services that are provided by the Wyoming State Hospital. And the idea is to provide those telehealth services in the jail, expanded from what we do now to reduce the number of people that are in custody that have to go down to the Wyoming State Hospital, to reduce that burden off of them and the wait time that everybody experiences. In turn, that reduces the time that people are just sitting idly in the jail, waiting for bed space at the state hospital. So if that plays out, there should be no or very minimal cost to the county. And again, I think good things can come out of it in reducing those people statically sitting in our jail waiting. Another update, Chancery Court is up and going in Natrona County. So that was brought in by the state. It's housed over in the state building. And as you're aware, the sheriff has the responsibility to attend all courts of record in his jurisdiction. So, so far, Chancery Court is primarily civil cases, corporate law type things. The chance of having a in-person court hearing or a contentious court hearing is very slim. But we do have their list of court cases, their docket, and we are in place to provide 2 deputies over to the state building to provide court security if and when that is needed. I wanted to take a real quick minute to thank you for staffing the county attorney's office. It is probably rare that a day goes by that I'm not on the phone or knocking on their door. So thank you for what that's worth. As the sheriff, I lean on them pretty hard to make day-to-day decisions, and it takes considerable research on their part sometimes, but surely I think those conversations result in the best service we can provide to our citizens. So thank you for that.
You're here.
And then real briefly, I'm still exploring another funding stream, but I may be coming to you with a request for a body scanner up at the jail. I know I've talked to a couple of you already about this. Essentially, this is a machine similar to what TSA uses to discover contraband that is secreted inside of somebody's person. So this is a direct attempt to thwart some of the smuggling attempts to get fentanyl and dangerous drugs inside the detention center. And it certainly be a very valuable tool in our arsenal of tactics and tools that we use to prevent that from happening. I think that's about as 100,000 foot as I can keep. Is that okay, Madam Clerk? All right. I got the thumbs up from the clerk. Any questions that I can answer?
Doesn't look like it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, just some quick numbers for you from the district court. We've opened so far this year 2,251 cases, brand new cases. We have cared for 41 appeals to the Supreme Court. We have processed over 15,000 e-filing pleadings and over 50,000 pieces of paper. We are on our 16th trial. We just finished that. E-filing, they're working on a rule to have it go mandatory, but it will not be mandatory for pro se litigants. We are going to be a pilot court for the Court Navigator program, and it is to start up the first quarter of next year. So just an overview of the district court. Any questions that you might have?
Can commissioner lawyers come over there and get a little training on how to file documents with their computer?
Yes.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time today and letting us give you updates. We feel this is going to be a good thing and good flow of communication for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you for thanks for taking the lead on it too. I hate to say it, but you actually had another half hour.
Possibly through.
Are you joining me?
In my personal life as well. My husband's my chief deputy, and I get it from all sides. I don't get any time wrong. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'm not quite moving in yet.
Wait, I hope that answered your question.
It did, thank you. You can't send an email out like that and then not want people to know.
It's amazing how many people have asked that same question.
Or how many people actually read it and
Well, yeah,
didn't
there's
catch
that too,
it.
but yeah.
You guys ready?
Are you ready?
I'm ready,
Okay,
sir. Thank
go ahead.
you. Good afternoon. So I'm back again with third time's a charm, or maybe this is the fourth, I'm not sure. But with resolution that's already been labeled 41-23, the resolution establishing a process to sell county-owned real property. And I did receive a couple email feedbacks regarding this when I sent it out. And one did not ask for any changes. And I believe Commissioner Milne, you had some questions about the notice. Okay. Too much notice in here?
No, I was just wondering if that was.
Oh, yes, so we believe that this is more than adequate notice for this type of situation. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't respond to that.
No, it's all good.
Right. And with all the changes that were made, and again, numerous forms of notice from the sign to the newspaper, to on our website, to on either our Twitter or Facebook or whatever platform, I think that's called. It's not my area, is plenty. And then, of course, I did extend some of the timelines or deadlines based off feedback. But we do think it's more than adequate.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Milne, I had met with Lita and was quite concerned about wanting to go overboard with notice and do everything we could so that it wouldn't be an unfair process. It wouldn't be a process that invited, kind of people, opportunists, and things like that. So I'm very comfortable with where we stand now, and I think we're doing a good job for the public in terms of safeguarding kind of the against shenanigans.
And in particular, I think that the notice by just the county going out there, putting up a for sale sign is helpful. I know my parents don't have Facebook, don't do any social media. And so that takes care of that aspect. Someone maybe just driving by or someone who doesn't have access, as well as we have the hard copy newspaper, so to speak, and then the electronic newspaper. I think that covers all members of, all of our citizens and what they may access. That's it. So I think this is the last of the items that may have been pending. If you all have anything else that we haven't gotten to, just let us know and we'll try to find it.
Lita, I just wanted to say thanks for getting this taken care of. This has been a long, long time coming and something that we've needed for a long time. And I didn't have any problem. I read through it and I was kind of wondering, there was a lot of notifications in there, but I also understand for transparency reasons, we need to do that. So, but I do appreciate that.
Thank you. Next up.
All right, thank you. Well, Mike, I get you about 35 minutes early, so
We'll try. Good afternoon.
good afternoon.
Did you get a chance to read my memo?
Yeah, we've got it in front of us.
Okay, all right. Well, basically, here to report on the readiness of the Road and Bridge Department for another winter that I hope we don't see. So far, it's looking good, but I distributed that memo that basically outlined some features of what we have as far as crews and equipment. I don't know if you want me to go through that whole thing, but to some degree. We've got the motor graders, four that are 6-wheel drive and 7 that are 4-wheel drive. The loaders, we have 5 of those and 2 snow blowers. The plow trucks, we have 6 of those. 2 of them are kind of reserves, but we have 6. The new dozer and then the 2 old dozers. So we got about $8 million worth of equipment, give or take, in snow removal alone. Staffing levels, I've got 12 out of 14 positions filled. Those range from $20.51 to $30.46. Those are the longer term employees, obviously, that are making that money. Anything from 26 years down to 6 months. The office manager, and then we get to the mechanics. We have the supervisor, who's also a mechanic, been here 42 years. He makes $38 an hour. And then we have a mechanic that works on the sheriff's office vehicles primarily. He's at $24.39 an hour. He's been here 5 years. I lost a mechanic a few months back. Haven't been able to fill that position. I haven't really even been getting applications. Then we have the administrative assistant, and the pros and cons, you probably saw those. You know, it's the pay scale is not competitive in today's market. Converse County, I think, is paying $30 an hour next door to us. People that came up and helped us last year, Caterpillar starts their lowest paid person at $24 an hour in the warehouse. So I'm unable to attract applicants right now. Got complaints from the workers that they can't make ends meet. I've lost experienced employees, particularly in that shop as a mechanic. City, I guess, just gave some kind of bonus, and school district did as well. As you well know, inflation's impacting every one of us on everything we do. Positive side of it, the county did give a raise in July, which is well received, and then they also were offering the benefit of a bump at your anniversary date. Benefit package is considerably fair and competitive. Employees like the variety of work that we have. That's one of the reasons they stay. We've got modern equipment. Continue to keep that like that as much as we can. And they love the 10-hour days. You know, they get some time off in the summer when they work such hard hours in the winter. Plus, it gives us more time in the field and more daylight. So as far as parts go, we're stocked up right now on everything that we normally stock. We had trouble last year getting cutting edges and you name it, as did everybody in the state. If it wasn't the trucking industry that was shut down delivering it, it was just the fact you couldn't get it. We've been in contact with our suppliers, and they feel they're in good shape this year to take on the winter. Basically, we struggle to compete with the market right now. Our employees are what make or break the county, in my opinion. They see everything we do as a county, and, you know, I hear it from them. And I've highlighted some of that in this memo. It's hard to face them some days and explain to them why we can't adjust our pay scale when we're doing other things. And they take notice when we're doing projects or various subsidies and things like that. So, you know, it's been my experience the 20 years I've been here, and, you know, and I was on the other side of that fence once too, sitting where you guys are. It seems like we do all these things and we always come back saying we can't afford it. And I think we're at a juncture right now, I'm gonna lose people. It's not so much whether I'm ready for winter, it's whether I'm ready for the exit. And I don't really know what we can do. I mean, that's a decision you folks would have to make, but we are feeling it, as is the city and the state. They all struggle to fill their positions. And I don't know where the workforce has gone. I mean, they sure don't want to fly. So it's got to be related to money and the ability to buy a house or keep your car payment going or pay for child support or whatever. I hear all that. I have varying degrees of that throughout the workforce. And some of those folks are working another job. So what do you do? So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, Mike, if I'm hearing you correctly, equipment wise, we're good going into the
I
winter.
think we are. I don't know, you know, I can rent things if I need to, from snow blowers, you know, to loaders to various equipment. If we had to, we lost ours for some reason, went down, but we just got a brand new blade. We got the new dozer. We got a brand new blade last year. So, I mean, we're in pretty good shape with equipment. You know, we did really well last year, all things considered. I mean, the equipment we had down was a dozer we couldn't get to. And we didn't get to it till spring. But we weren't the only ones that happened to. State had some of that as well, and other counties. But it was a godsend that Converse came up and helped us. City helped us. We've helped the city too, so.
I think part of the biggest concern is that obviously last year was a complete different animal than what we've seen in a long time. But being able to make sure that we have the equipment there, whether we have to rent it or not. Like last year, it seemed like, you know, the southern part of the state got hit harder than we did, and a lot of the things that we would count on being able to rent here were not able to be rented because they were elsewhere helping out the rest of the state. So I think the biggest concern is going into this season and making sure that you have what you need, whether it's equipment or people power to make this stuff happen. And I appreciate this memo because it kind of lines out, at least on the people power side of things, as to where some of the issues might lie. So,
Well, at this time last year, I had between 9 and 10 people because of the exiting, and I'm up on that right now. So that's good.
okay. Commissioner Laird.
So for me, for my understanding, I'd like you to give a recommendation of what you think these wages should be.
Well, you know, I'm probably not the one to answer that. the HR director that's gonna be here, but she probably didn't know I started early, but, are you here? Oh, there you are. We need to take a look at what's going on around us, because, you know, when the mines are still paying better, that's why Converse County has to pay what they pay, and they aren't that far from us. I've had some of my guys think about going down there, you know? The thing that keeps them here is their families. So it's the ability to retain the people and then make a decent living. You know, one operator came to me, he's taking home $2,800. You guys can all sit up there and figure that out for groceries and car payments and everything else. Actually, he ended up going to the hospital to take his wife up there, and they wanted $300 for him to even get seen. And she's crazy. They haven't got it. And I don't know what I really don't. I mean, I sympathize with the decisions that need to be made there. I think they're gonna get tougher, the expenses are gonna get worse. And we're not the only ones in this boat, but, you know, I'd do everything I can to look at where else I could cut in a budget, or we could fund, you know, raises some other way, which I mentioned in here a little bit. But that's a tough one, because it impacts the whole county.
Well, it's tough on me because I can't hear any numbers from anybody yet.
Well, I put numbers in there where
I see
we
the
are.
numbers. So I'm
And-
saying, is a $5 raise an hour gonna do it?
Well, I think anything would be a help, anything.
But what should be done?
I think we need to be competitive with what's around us, whether, you know, everybody kind of looks to the city and other places. The state's not giving any raises. I mean, they are down on the totem pole with help. And I don't understand that at all. It's not my problem, but, you know, it'd be nice to be turning people away on applications instead of begging them to come in the door. And you'd have a much better field of people to draw from, and I just don't have that right now. I
Is
told
this
you I
something that needs to be done right away? That we'd consider a raise? And
Well, yes, if we can afford it, you know. That's where it's at. I mean, it's not gonna get any better.
I guess outside of asking you this, then Mike, maybe Danielle, have you had an opportunity, are we within market? Are we being competitive, or can you look at outside communities and show that there is a substantial difference?
So that's kind of a loaded question. I reported at the department head meeting, the first department head meeting of the month, that the state is going to do a salary study specific to governments and municipalities, for Wyoming governments and municipalities. Our region will be in the northeast region, which will be Converse, Campbell, Crook, Johnson, Natrona, Niobrara, Sheridan, and Weston counties. So that's where they will look at the data according to our region. We'll get the full survey. There's 34 entities that have confirmed participation. And like I said, the state's doing this, the Department of Administration and Information. So we are going to participate in that.
Mr. Chairman, when's that gonna be done?
Well, they are starting it in January and they're hoping to have it done by April so that people can get it in their next budgets.
That's pretty quick for state government, but I don't know that that's very quick for Mr. Hagler and the long hours that the guys are gonna put in this winter.
So it is on my to-do list every 2 years to update the salary study. And we didn't do it last year because we had done it just previously in the fall. And in November is when we gave all the significant increases. And so we will be doing that this spring. Part of the problem with this, though, is historically, municipalities and counties pay less than private entities. And that's where, if we're not competitive with the private entities.
But it seems to me, Mr. Chairman, it seems to me, Danielle, that if Mr. Hagler mentioned that the state and the No, I'm sorry. School district and the city just gave bonuses and pay raises. It seems like we could follow up on that pretty quickly and at least know where we stand in relation to government competitors. You know, the private industry is what it is, but I'd like to know a little more about how close we are to school district and city and maybe state too. Why
So
not?
that is job specific. We did have the city of Casper and obviously in the last salary study. And historically, we've looked at the city of Casper and made them our competitor or considered them our competitor. And I think previous commissions have brought up the fact that we're not the city and it's comparing apples to oranges. And in many ways it is, and budgets are different. However, when you're talking about your employees and they're going to look for a job and they're trying to put food on the table, they're going to go to the place where they see the most in their paycheck.
But, I'm sorry, it just seems to me that, you know, we, Mr. Hagler's department touches as many people that are my constituents as anybody else, if not a lot more. And that the one thing you hear throughout the year is, you know, fix my road or, you know, plow my snow. And so I totally appreciate that the study takes time and, you know, we can't be doing it every month. But this is one area where, you know, maybe we can try and move a little more quickly. I don't know. Thanks.
I could certainly do that. If that is the wishes of the commission, I can start on the operators immediately.
Well, I personally would like to give them a raise before the big snow hits. Because, so if they're out there working and they're grinding, and it's something I think we can take action on, why can't we just give them all a $5 an hour raise? I mean, it's a start. These people, they got Christmas coming up, they got this $2,800 this guy's making, $300 to go to a hospital. I mean, it doesn't take much to ignite me to see that they are deserving and need a raise, especially his crews. And I would think it should be all of our employees if we can do it. But right now, if you've got a county that's paying $30 an hour, he's paying $22 an hour, I wouldn't blame one of them if they went to work for Converse County. But a $5 raise might cheer some people up here and not have them in the middle of snowstorms and still making peanuts. That's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
The only thing I would add is that, so I'll look back in my career, and I know that for the longest time, and Jim might have been there at the time, the sheriff's department, I remember getting my monthly paycheck, and it equaled one paycheck of a city police officer. They were making the same amount in 2 weeks as I made in a year, or in a month. And, but at the end of the day, those officers or deputies were doing the exact same job, putting their lives on the line, doing the exact same thing. You might do it more, you will do it more in the city than you will do it in the county, but all it takes is one bad incident and it ends up the same. So, and I kind of look at it no differently here, where you have, the city plow trucks have a lot of streets that they got to plow, but you got long roads you got to plow and get opened up so that ranchers can get in and out. So I don't really like that way of looking at things. Just, you know, you shouldn't be paid less because you work for the county as compared to the city. You still have a job to do. A job's going to get done. You're going to do it 8 hours a day. And I'll tell you, back then, there was a lot of people that I ended up retiring with at the city that I started with at the county that left the county to go to the city because they just weren't making the money. So I would like to look at a fixes as soon as we can, if there is a possibility. And I realize that if you make adjustments, it can throw everything out of whack on as far as your wages go. But I would really like to see if we are being competitive with other communities. And if we're not, then I'd like to look at if there's a way of fixing that.
Sure.
Commissioner Milne.
So, how do you not agree with that? The problem is also, though, and I'm concerned that we're grouped up with those counties in the state study because those counties ad valorem is insane compared to ours. They've got so much more money coming in. So, yeah, it's great to, and you want to, but when you're looking at the funds, you're looking at the money, you're looking at the budget, and we're sending back, what, $9 million or so again, because the state gave us the wrong counties ad valorem. That's coming out of our budget. This stuff, we just don't have a money tree in the backyard like some of these counties do. So we're going to have to be cautious and not just make a knee-jerk reaction.
Here's the issue. These people know what the other guys make around. And if we don't meet that, they leave. Then we have no grounds crew. We don't have anybody out there getting the people out. And I agree with Jim about the money. You got to worry about the money. We have money. We have money. We could give them a $5 raise, in my opinion. Get them through this winter. Take time. When I hear about studies from the government and all that, I want to tear my hair out because they probably got 4 of them sitting on the bookcase that they did, and the new ones aren't going to be much different. I know when the city did that kind of thing. But I would like to give them a raise. I'd like to give them a raise tonight if I could do it. If I could talk these guys into giving them each $5 an hour. It isn't going to break us. It isn't going to hurt us. And it goes through getting them through this terrible weather that's coming up here.
Commissioner Nicholas.
Well, this is not the kind of decision to make off the cuff. And Danielle has the ability and the talent to tell us where things stand from a factual, data-driven perspective. I agree with Commissioner Milne that being lumped in with Campbell and Converse counties makes me a little nervous on that state study. If you look at their budgets, blows us out of the water, and on their tax base and everything. We could say everybody that works for the county and every single department, deserves a raise. But I don't think we can say that until we have the data and we see what the impact is going to be and we see that we can afford it. I don't know if we can afford a $5 an hour raise. I think that's a decision that can't be made lightly, even if we would like to give all kinds of additional benefits and raises to every employee every month. But we have a reality here that we're using the taxpayers' money, and we can't just kind of throw around hundreds of thousands of dollars because we really appreciate our employees. We got to do this right.
And I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add, though, we have residents that are looking at our crews to take care of their roads. And I don't know if it would get bad enough what would happen if 5 guys left their jobs out there to go to work somewhere else? What would happen to you?
It'd be devastating.
You wouldn't be able to take care of the public.
Yeah, there would be roadways that wouldn't be plowed. We'd primarily probably be looking at the paved stuff and get to the ranches when we could.
So, I hope that doesn't happen while we're fiddling around wondering whether some state's going to do something and tell us some number. I think,
That's not what we're talking about.
I know, and let me finish. I know that. I think that you're right. We need to have our people look into it and see if we can do this. And we should do it right away. Like, Christmas is coming up, but it's Tuesday. Can we know by Thursday? So what happens? What do you have to do to figure out whether we can give them $5 an hour so we can keep them working here when the snowstorm hits?
I think what we do is allow Danielle to move forward and try and figure out where we're sitting at in the market. I agree with Peter. It's not a knee-jerk reaction saying $5 per hour. You can't do that. It's because $5 today per hour is $5 next year and next year and next year. So let's allow you enough time to go out there and do it. It's not going to take till April to get it done, but allow you enough time to go out and get the answers that are being asked here.
So what would that amount of time be, Danielle?
Well, the last salary study that I did, I started in July, and that's all I did until November. So I can't give you an answer on that. It depends on where we're gonna pull the information from. If we're just gonna compare it to the city of Casper, that's a piece of cake. I don't have to pull it from other counties and municipalities. Are we gonna pull it from private companies? Are we gonna pull it from Wyoming Machinery and Knife River? And, I mean, are we gonna look at private entities? What is it that the commission is looking for? Because we will not meet the private entities. The goal was to get to midpoint of what the state's average was with the last salary study. We were historically on the very bottom of around 10% or below. And the goal was to get to midpoint. In order to go over midpoint, you have to have at least 20 years of service right now with the county in order to go over midpoint.
Danielle, I would tell you that I think it needs to stay within the government, not out of the private entities. Obviously, they're going to pay a lot more money, but you should keep it within government. And I think you look at the state as a whole, not just Casper. I mean, that's going to obviously skew it. That's my personal opinion, but I think that you should look at government across the state.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would agree, but give you the discretion that you think is reasonable in terms of a sample size. And I think just the city of Casper is going to skew it. So make it broader than that, but just let us know what that looks like. And if we have problems, well, why didn't you check with this municipality or that county? I guess we can have that discussion at that point in time.
Okay.
Question for Mike. Have you checked with the different counties surrounding us as to what they pay?
No, it's been a number of years since I did that, since Daniel.
Well, and part of the problem that we've got is, it's just like the Casper Mountain Road. We've had all kinds of expenses that have come up that are draining our budget. And I'm not disagreeing that we need to take care of our employees, but we need to figure out what we're going to spend that money on and quit spending on things that we don't have to spend it on. If we're going to put the money back into our employees and retain them, then that's something we need to look at. If we're going to spend money on something where we're giving money to an out-of-state entity, if that's going to affect us, and that's the bottom line. We only have so much that we can't print money. We can't raise taxes. We're limited on what our income is. And we got to live within our means. And I just look at everything, and there's going to be some hard cuts coming with the cost of everything that's coming up. I'm just getting nervous about it, because I'm looking at how much money we've got going out on different projects and how much higher the cost of those projects are in relation to what we had originally budgeted for. And we're going to have to pay those bills. And that's going to affect everybody. One way or another, that's going to affect everybody. And we have got to set our priorities on what we're going to do and what we're going to take care of. And personally, I think our employees and the things that we're mandated to take care of are things that we need to take care of, and not the outside entities.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest, in the interest of having time to study this properly, that maybe the commission considers the bonus thing for Christmas, just to give a morale boost. And you're not locked into anything at one time, whatever that may be. And that'd give us all times to look at the commitments we have. I know I have commitments on road projects that are going over right now. I'm going to move some of them off. Some of them are in the tip, but the way things are coming in, we're not going to do it. I know you can't do it. The money I work with, it's not there. So it's not committed. It's futuristic, and I don't like playing that game. So, I fully understand the county's commitments. You know, we're in the same boat everybody is, that things are going downhill. And, an employee-based raise is tough because you live with it. You know, I worked at the city when we laid half the force off. That was not fun. 50 people I had to lay off. Yeah, out of 100. And, you know, we kept thinking it was gonna get better. We actually worked 1 day a week for free on a furlough. So I've been through that, but, don't wanna see that happen. But in the same token, we don't keep people that know our road system and our function. It's hard taking a new guy and putting him 80 miles out of town. You know, it's just tough. You're worried about him all day long because half the time you can't talk to him. But we're there. I mean, our seasoned people have left. I mean, and the rest are getting ready to. So my intent is to try to get and keep people that have learned the system and will be here for you. But there's no guarantees. We've been fortunate. They like working for the county, but right now they can't eat.
Do you think your employees would be willing to wait 6 months for the study to be done, then we'll get back to them?
You know, they're gonna stay unless they go somewhere else. I mean, I really truly believe that some type of bonus is gonna be more of a morale thing to them, with the understanding that we're doing the study. Might buy us some time on some exiting, might not.
Do you have a suggestion for the amount of the bonus?
I do not. I would compare that to what I understand the city did one. I don't know what it was, but, and the school district did some kind of adjustment, which I just heard all this from my people. So I'm sure it's probably true, but is it?
Yeah, when I know the city gave all full-time, I think it was $1,000 and part-time $500.
And that's to all the employees of the city got that? So they have a few more than we do, but we have quite a few. So it's easy to do that math. If you gave them $1,000.
Well, what's the math? What's that math gonna be for part and full-time employees at $500,000?
Well, how are we gonna tax it? Are we gonna give them 1,000 and then tax it, so they're bringing home 780, or are we gonna give them 1,000 and then eat the tax above it?
Gross it out.
What, do you know how the city handled it?
I have no idea. I just read something in the paper, a headline. That's how I knew.
Just say 1,000 includes payroll, includes, employer, the contribution, I guess, employees.
Well, Tracy, I think we're looking at like 315,000.
So 400 grand.
So do we have that money? You what? Well, a lot of times we've asked you if we had money and you've told us.
Yeah, and that doesn't include outside boards, right?
Libraries, a lot of theirs are part-time that aren't benefited. We always considered it, if you were part-time, you were a permanent part-time benefited, so at least 20 hours a week. Those would be the ones that would get the bonus, is what we did in the past.
So you're talking about somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. So I guess, can we afford that?
We can look into it and figure it out in the next couple of weeks.
If you could put something together and send it to us on exact numbers of what it would be. That way we can review it and talk about it.
So obviously, this is not something you're wanting for December payroll. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, I will say that that's when it's most appreciated by employees is a December before Christmas bonus.
Dallas, there's a lot of things that would be appreciated, but we're not just gonna write a check here today, whether it's $5 an hour or $1,000 bonus.
I know that, Mr.
we need
Chairman.
to
I'm,
know
I'm just talking about the human factor,
I get it.
you know? I remember once when you told me about what your story about the sheriff's department and you wanted to raise in pay, so you went to work for the police department. And they lost a good officer when you did that. So you made my point on what could happen out here. And so Christmas is an important time for a lot of people. Puts extra stress on them because of presents and the different things they have to do. So my personal reaction would be I'd like to see them get it before Christmas. And I think it can be figured out pretty quickly if we do a bonus. I think that was a good idea Mike has.
Okay. Duly noted. We'll be looking for your memo. Thank you. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Built that off.
You're up, Jared.
They're actually gonna take one.
All right.
So I see some cookies there. Did your wife do that?
Yes, sir.
Those are very nice looking. I'm going to break my fast on sugar. I'm going to eat a couple of those tonight. But would you tell her thank you from me?
I will.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Board of Appeals and the Building Department have concluded the review in the process for the adoption of the 2021 building codes as it relates to Natrona County building standards and established building codes. With the previous resolutions, the majority of the housekeeping were to refine definitions between the Board of Appeals, Board of County Commissioners, and the building official, establish and set to the terms of appointment for the BOA, shifted the last sentence in section 5 for the Board of Appeals, the sentence number 5 to independent section to general E was adjusted. As in your copy, you'll see where they're highlighted in blue or in red where they're stricken through those dates, and appealing language were removed pending the public opinion and the approval of the council. The
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, do we have a copy of this in the packet?
No.
So we're not tracking.
We don't
this is
have
our
that.
memo.
Yeah, we do not have.
My apology, I was informed that it was already provided to you guys, to the council.
Yeah, it was not very easy for me to follow along.
Oh, absolutely.
We were under the understanding that you guys had this already.
I was looking on the computer and it wasn't there. I looked back at it. That goes all the way up to the south and where the post office is.
I know where it is. I'll ask them about it.
I think the field days are on county property. Yeah. No, the gas pumps. The pumps.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioners, while we're waiting for those, essentially what is happening at this point is the Board of Appeals has met, they met almost every Thursday between the beginning of September and the end of October to review the building codes and make any necessary changes to the resolutions that we currently have. Currently, we're running off of the 2018 building codes and need to get up to the 2021 codes, which will then this next year, I think with new
every 3 years.
but right now, we're not currently in compliance, but we intend to get the rulemaking process out there to get us at least as up to date as we can be right now, and it'll hopefully be a fairly smooth transition for the next update with the 2024 codes that come out, as Bill had recently reviewed all of that. We do have some language that's shifted because of the updates in the code. Other language that we had that the Board of Appeals looked at pretty in depth to make some clarifications from some resolutions that we previously had.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I interrupt and just while we're waiting, instead of maybe talking about 50,000-foot view, maybe you or Patrick can tell us about some of the big changes between what we currently have versus what we're talking about now. I mean, what are the contractors, what is the public going to be like? What are you doing? Or what are they going to have the most concerns with from how's it going to impact them? Just if you have to answer that.
Before he goes into that, I got a quick question, because basically the state's already adopted these codes, correct?
Yes.
So we actually lose home rule if we don't adopt them within 6 months. So it doesn't really matter. We have to do this, because if we don't adopt this, then we're having to go by what the current rule is anyway. And we've lost our ability to control what we're doing. And so this is something, that's the way it is with all these codes. Once the state adopts them, we have 6 months to comply with that. And if we don't, then we lose that ability to control what we're doing.
On the backside of that, the state's been really lenient on us for getting this passed finally. So, and you've been in contact with them, correct?
Yes, sir. I have been speaking to Byron Matthews, the state fire marshal. I explained the situation of the vacant building official position. He just wanted me to keep him abreast of the progress. I did so. I made it known that we were on the work session for tonight, and he was okay with everything as long as we stay on track.
But can you answer
Yes,
Peter's
I will.
question, please?
In regards to that, what the public would see for major changes would be, one is a snow load exception statement. Second would be, and I'll circle around and go back to those. Fire rating for common walls and like garages for the fire safety, 5/8 type X gyp board. The added subsection 105 updated to match IBC, the International Building Code resolution for permitting. They're going to see the removal of the International Plumbing Code. It was a redundant, obsolete table for the required spaces for plumbing appliances and fixtures that the manufacturer's installation guides supersede code for the most restrictive part of the code. So their restrictions and requirements would supersede ours anyways. So that was just removed because there's a redundant table that didn't serve any major purpose.
So I might have misunderstood you. I'm sorry, Patrick. Did you say that ours supersedes the state, or the state supersedes ours?
No, the manufacturer's installation supersede the building code as long as the most restrictive application is adhered to.
I see.
And 99% of the time, the manufacturers are more restrictive than what the building code is.
Right.
So this created a sort of a paradox that table was no longer needed because it's overridden anyways by the manufacturer.
Thank you.
And, back to Commissioner Nicolation's comments regarding what the public may see. or even for that matter, contractors or anyone like that, they're already dealing with these items in the sense that some of these antiquated codes and things like that that we've eliminated and dealt with is just now everyday progress of what the contractors and people are doing. So we're probably the biggest one that will impact the construction of things is going to potentially be the snow load scenario. That is a redesigned scenario where the currently that's 100 pounds per square foot on the mountain, and it's above 6,000 feet, it's 100 pounds. Below 6,000 feet is a 30-pound requirement. Well, there's a great tool out there put on by the ASCE. I think it's ASCE 7, and that tool allows someone to put in the address of their residence where they're wanting to build a new building, and that will tell them what the snow load requirements needs to be for that address or GPS scenario. That is something that's going to probably affect it more than anything, depending on where they live. Suddenly they have to have a 130-pound snow load because of them being up against the foothills of the mountain, and they get a lot of wind, load, and snow on top of their building. I'm just throwing some numbers out there as a speculative scenario. But those are probably the things that's going to be affecting people the most is that snow load requirement. But we believe it's a necessity because the other scenario is we said we only needed 100 pounds and their building falls down. So we can now put this back on this tool that is put on by the, I don't recall what ASCE stands for.
Society of Civil Engineering.
Yep, so there's some engineers that have created this tool. So now you can say, hey, this is how this is supposed to be, and it's a little, probably because it's engineered, it might be a little bit overbuilt, but you're not gonna have somebody's building fall down because they got a big snow load on it. So that's probably the biggest thing that's going to affect the people.
I have a question on that, and maybe these guys already know, but you said two things. You said 6,000 feet, and you said Castle Mountain.
Mhm.
There are other places in the county that are at or above 6,000 feet.
Yep,
So
and so this tool would know that.
So it's anywhere over 6,000 feet?
No, so the 6,000 feet, let's just say you're only at 4,800. It will then calculate the snow load needed for that 4,800.
No, but would it apply to that?
This tool will know that no matter what elevation you're at, it would then create the snow load for that, even if it might be a lower or even a higher. Down around the Saratoga area, there's stuff that's 11, 12,000 feet. But yes, because of the tool knows where these buildings would be built and knows that snow load for that area, even if it's only 5,000.
It takes slope and everything else into account when it's doing this.
Well,
And
it
so
has
it's
three phases. You have a longitude, latitude, you can have an address, or you can drop a pin to find your location. Then it has multiple risk factors for the International Building Code of either a commercial property or a residential build. It has an adjustable design scale on for the residential side. The tool is interactive. It's quicker actually than I believe Commissioner North was there when one of the engineers, he said it's as easy as Google Earth. It's actually about 3 times faster. It's 10 times easier. It will calculate wind, snow, rain. It takes into account for topography, wind pockets, elevation lines, deflection from forests and earth. So it's going to be a useful tool. It's not something we're going to rely on 100%. The exception statement that was added to the resolution when you're provided with it will say the building official may permit an alternate design to the snow load requirements, but that'll be utilizing the ASCE 7-22 hazard tool. Both IBC and the IRC, they both reference ASCE 7, which is an engineer. It's the civil engineer. This is for what they do for each code cycle. The 21 codes is ASCE 7-16, and then the ASCE 7-22 is actually the 24 code. I referenced this, and it was added with the Board of Appeals voting on it to make reference to it now, so it goes into effect. So when we move to the 24 code, there'll be minimal adjustments made at that time for adoption of those codes.
Well, the best thing about this is it's based off science. It's based off information instead of a magic line that was drawn.
Yes, sir.
So
There
you-
is
so-
no
so you-
more
instead-
599, 99. and
Yeah, so instead of
6,000.
going from 30 to 100, because you're a foot difference or 2 feet difference, you actually can actually show somebody, this is why.
Correct.
This is what it looks like, and this is the reason why. We aren't just pulling these numbers and saying, oh, yeah, this sounds good.
And if an engineer was going to create their snow loader, they're going to create a building and their roof structures for this, they would use this tool to create that structure.
And potentially the snow loads could actually decrease in elevation if topography permitted it with the.
Well, I know a lot of the numbers you pulled up that we looked at when I came in and we were talking to you, some of them were higher, but a lot of them were substantially lower than what they currently are because of our magic line that we drew around
Yep.
and set everything. It's just like you go out to Highland, and even though it's 7,200 feet, they don't get any snow.
Right.
Correct.
So they don't need the snow load that we do.
I think
Another,
you and I, we used Goose Egg.
Yeah.
Road for
Yeah.
a reference point.
yeah, and that was, if I remember right, that ended up being 43 pounds instead of
Correct.
100 pounds because of the elevation height. So,
Probably the next major scenario that, and I wouldn't call it major, but the next item that would be visible to contractors and people would be the 5/8 ruling before, excuse me, the fire rating of requiring 5/8 drywall between garages and homes, that separation wall. I think that ours is, we went, you might help me with this a little bit, where we decided that, does it need to be just the dividing wall, or the wall and the ceiling needs to be 5/8 type X?
If it's a garage with habitable space on above it or on the other side, common wall, it's required by code now 5/8 type X drywall. If it's not, if it's unfinished space, it is not required, so it would just.
that's just a 45-minute fire rating.
Correct.
So
And
Now,
you're
you
going
can
from 30, you're
double-
going
you
from 30 to 45, and so it makes a lot of sense when you're looking at that difference.
And our concern when we were in the board of Appeals talking about all of this is the distance from fire support, fire departments that most of the county could be. And so the longer we can create, or the more time we can give people to get there to help, the better, we thought. That was some of the comments that we were making when we were having the conversations about should we up this or not. And I believe this also follows with some of the city of Casper rules and regulations that they're doing. And a lot of our verbiage and all of this stuff was to create some continuity between the city and the county so that contractors aren't struggling when they come to work from one entity to another. They've got a continuity that they're building similar structures.
So is this something the contractors have looked at, or are they gonna yell about it?
I don't believe we put out, all of our meetings have been recorded. They've been put in the paper to invite public, but we don't believe that any public has seen any of these changes yet. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the intent of this is we will begin the rulemaking process, and we're going to change, have several resolutions passed to actually adopt these rules officially. So there will be another opportunity. All these meetings were public meetings that other contractors could come to on Thursday afternoons. No one did, but as far as the rulemaking process, we will get that posted. We'll get our notice of intent to adopt rules posted in the paper and on the county's website with a copy of all the rules. And there is actually, I think, on January 5th, we are scheduled for a community session. It's tentatively set for right now. So our plan is to get the notice out fairly quickly here, and then there'll be a time for the community to come in and discuss the issues today.
Jared, I don't know if you know or not, but I'm assuming being we're adopting a 21 and about to go into a 24. Has the city of Casper already adopted this in the past?
I believe so.
And so I would imagine any changes that you're going to make, the contractors have already been dealing with these changes anyways, building within the city of Casper. So I highly doubt you're gonna have a whole lot of negative feedback to any of this, because they're probably used to doing it now anyways.
That is correct.
Honestly, Mr. Chair, I would imagine that given, that we're just now getting the 21 rules adopted and everyone's gonna be looking towards the 24 rules, there's not gonna be a whole lot because everybody's gonna be focused on what's going to be happening with 24.
All right. Yeah.
Come up and speak on the mic, just because people out, if they're listening, they can't hear you. We can hear you, but you can't, anybody else can't, so they won't know what you're saying.
I just wanted to clarify the change to that fire separation wall. It's actually getting more lenient. Because our original rule was a 1 hour rated wall. That has always been our requirement. It gets kind of complicated to try to meet that 1 hour rating sometimes. So the city of Casper has always been 5/8 on one side and that's it. We were trying to match and get a little more lenient on that and get consistent with the city of Casper. So the contractors are going to like this change. It's going to make it a lot easier. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brad.
That was my mistake. Thank you.
Commissioner Milne.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, this is getting a little bit so that the county and the city, the requirements and everything's a little bit more equal, a little easier on you guys. And in the end, if any of the contractors has a problem, they're going to be coming to you anyways as the Board of Appeals.
That's correct. Yep.
I appreciate reduction in some of the requirements, and I do think that that's something that the contractors will appreciate that. 5/8 has been kind of the standard for a long time when you're having that barrier, whether it's the ceiling and the walls, or whether you're just doing the interior walls that are adjacent to the living structure.
Right.
I don't think anybody's going to complain about that at all. I think that's perfectly reasonable, and you can explain. I mean, it's easy to explain why you guys are doing that, and making that across the board so people understand what they really need to do. I think that really helps.
So till the paperwork, move along until the paperwork comes in, the next, all building trades, grammar, language, definitions were all either outdated or obsolete, were removed, and then current, and then trying to, as Brad had mentioned, also is to bring in line to what City of Casper enforces. We had addressed the National Electrical Code. We updated some of the definitions, the requirements, the qualifications for inspectors. Some of this was done prior to my arrival, so I will either defer to either Brad or Scott, because he's the chair for the BOA, these meetings, and what we had accomplished on those meetings.
Yeah, for the most part with the electrical code, we just adopted what the code is. We don't have, as a county, we don't have any amendments or addendums to the electrical code. What we have is created some definitions of the inspectors and what their qualifications are, to make sure that they're qualified to be an inspector and qualified to be able to navigate whether or not a project is appropriate or not. We just defined what the requirements are. Made sure that they have been an electrician in trade. They've also gone through their electrical inspector training as necessary, all of those kinds of things. We've also kind of defined what their responsibilities are. For example, electrical inspectors don't get to give permits. Permitting is done by, the building officials and things like that. So that's what a lot of the language is just defining responsibilities and all of that. But as far as code changes, we just basically adopted the 2021 believe it's 21, might be 20. I'm getting confused with some of these timelines. But anyways, we've adopted what the most current section is of the code, and it's just in the code book. Those are the rules. And we haven't created any addendums or any changes to that code. It's just most of the stuff in here is responsibilities of inspectors and the requirements of them.
Commissioner Milne.
So once again, with the NEC, it's just lining everything back up and just having everything across the board.
Yep.
Okay, and the most significant are those changes with inspectors, and that's what not so much the public would see, but contractors. Okay.
That's correct. It's going to be and it's, again, it's no different than what is happening already. If someone needs an electrical permit, they don't go to an inspector to get it. They go to the building department to get it. So it's just kind of some changing of the original verbiage and just defining that stuff better is what mostly what the changes were in the NEC or the electrical side of it, because the NEC itself, the code book, doesn't have much of those definitions about what the responsibilities are for any of the inspectors or anything like that. It just says, hey, if you're going to go build something, this is how you build it. So we've kind of added some of that verbiage to define what the inspector's responsibilities are and some of that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Then
There must have been a lot of stuff she had to copy.
Yeah. I think it was a PowerPoint.
The mechanical code, the existing building code, plumbing code, with the exception of section 301 removal, the fire codes and fuel gas languages are updated to match the code as to what we have adopted, so there is no discrepancy of what we enforce. It matches the county's resolution. So, I mean, we can go through each trade, but it would be a redundant other than just changing the titles. The last thing I would have would be the fees, the permitting fees, and everything with the permit fee schedule was updated to reflect resolution 4520. As the packet will show, that's the only resolution that still has a number on it, because we still have those permit fees at those levels and amounts.
So, Mr. Chair, at this point, what our plan is to just move forward and get that notice published, and then we'll be back for you in 45 to 60 days. Hopefully we'll be able to have everything passed and updated.
So just one last question. I mean, so obviously we're going to the 2024. How far behind are we in actually adopting this code? I mean, when should this have been
6
done?
months? We're 6 months out.
6 months ago, it should have been adopted?
2024 will be 6 months. Because they just, yeah.
code is supposed to be adopted by the end of July.
Okay.
We're not that far out, but the next one is next year. So
Well, that's why I ask. I'm just like, okay, well, if we're doing this in 6 months, shouldn't we have done this like 2 years ago? But I get that answers my question, so. Okay. Well, sorry we didn't have the
Oh, it's I'm sorry, I
presentation.
was informed that was provided to you, so my apologies for the confusion.
Okay. Yeah, let's blame it on
Blame
Jared.
everything on Jared. It's all his fault.
7 more attachments are coming.
I don't think we need it now. Well, we need it, but.
I want to read through them.
We'll review all this. Good.
Not seeing paperwork yet, but just going off of the experience and the personnel, people that we have on the fields work for doing this type of work.
Yeah. I just want to add what's the name of the program that we looked at?
ASCE 7-22.
Okay, so this program, what he says is 100% correct. We literally went in there and punched in an address, and within seconds, we're able to pull up the wind load, snow load, whatever you wanted to. And it's a pretty amazing program itself. It's not like you would have to, like, incrementally just, like, figure it out going up the mountain and figure out exactly what it's going to be. You can pinpoint any address, you can pinpoint a spot anywhere, and it's gonna figure it out for that location. So it's a tool that's gonna save a ton of time, and nobody has, like I said, just slowly work your way up the mountain to figure out what snow loads are gonna be. You can use this tool and it'll tell you right down to where the location is. So I like it. And those are the people we count on anyways to tell us what the loads are. So
The code already references ASCE 7, so that's,
yep.
there's not a fee incurred by the county to utilize it either, so.
Yeah. Commissioner Nicholas.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I'm looking at the resolution 4520 from 2021, January 1st, 2021. I don't know, I don't really have any context whether those are reasonable fees or not. If it were from last year or this year, I wouldn't suggest we even consider changing them. But since it's been a few years, I didn't know if that's one of the things that you and your board have looked at, is whether those fees are still where they should be or whether they should be higher or lower. I don't know if you want to comment on that today, but just, I guess, a general broad question of what do you think of the fees?
During the BOA, hearings, what we were conducting, we were shadowing City of Casper. And we're in line with them. Some things were a little bit higher, but it balances out with the final cost of what they impose. Will it be, as the other part of your question, will it be too low in the future? I would say yes. And if professionally, I would say yes. They're gonna have to eventually be increased with the level of service that we provide. It's gonna have to go up.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mill.
In the past, your department, with the fee structure and everything like that, it was attempted, it's not a money-making operation, obviously, right? But it was always attempted to try to come out as neutral as possible, primarily because your permits, your inspections or whatnot are for a particular, one individual or one group or one whatever, not for the entire county, not for the entire population that's paid in taxes. And so that philosophy was always in the past to try to keep that burden, the permit burden, the cost of your department on the shoulders of that developer, builder, the owner of the house that's putting something together, rather than having the taxpayer subsidize that one person's house.
Correct.
So, yeah.
The second page on Exhibit A, you can see where the current City of Casper and the Natrona County are on the two vertical tables. It's based on a percentage, the formula. So it's not like it's an exorbitant amount of money for a small project that, as Commissioner Millen did reference, it's not in that it's going to extort or subsidize, like you said, to charge for a permit. It's on a formula scale, so it's affordable.
Based on the size of the project.
Based on the size and the evaluation of the project.
As long as you don't have to drive 5 times out 40 miles for one inspection.
So I'm glad you said that, Commissioner Milne, because I see that like a second reinspection fee ends up being $55 according to this. So I guess the thought process behind that, I mean, if you go out and inspect and you give a laundry list of things that need to be fixed, and then they call you and say, okay, it's done, you go back out and maybe half the list is fixed. at what point do you start charging them? Because this is not a trip to go from downtown Casper to the east side and a 10-minute trip and go over there and look at it and then say, oh, well, you still didn't get this done. So at what point do we start charging reinspection fees for not paying attention and getting the work completed that they've already been told needs to be completed, if that makes sense?
It does, Mr. Chairman. In my professional history and experience, it's always been a 3 strikes and you're out. If you go out and you give them the air quotes grocery list or laundry list, come back and you use Scott as an example. Scott, this is your list, 1 through 8. I go back, 1 through 3 is done and nothing else. That's my second trip. The third trip back, that's when I would impose a reinspection fee. They were provided legitimate opportunity to make the repairs. We've made 2 trips out. We're on the 3rd trip. I have to account for my inspector's time and the fuel to the county that we have to draw a line and have a regimented bar of enforcement of what we're going to maintain for public safety and building a better home.
Mr. Chairman, do you allow them to take a picture and send it to you and show you where they are? And try to get
It would depend on the complexity of the project. If it's something small that we've already previously inspected, I would be inclined to accept that. If it's something serious of a life safety issue or anchorage or load path, I would probably say no. Just for the fact that verification of work and materials that were used.
Thank you.
And at the end of the day, your name and the county's name's on it. So if it fails, just want to reiterate that your name and the county's name is on that. So
I'm not particularly fond of metal bunk beds. So.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that.
Thank you too, Jared.
Yes. I will.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you too, Jared.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to. Okay, we will turn it over to Heather. Agenda review and then the resolution we know we're pulling. So.
Yes, and maybe I can just bring that up first. So this came about just kind of as a housekeeping measure to try to clean up, an outlying old resolution we had out there that didn't provide for the board to give site-specific approval to Wyoming horse racing. So I put this together, put it on the agenda. The attorney for Wyoming horse racing contacted me this morning when he became aware and expressed some concerns that he just wanted to make sure that the language that we have proposed in this resolution is going to be acceptable to the Gaming Commission and the Attorney General's office, so it doesn't appear that one of the sites that they operate currently that I don't think that they do have site-specific approval on, that this doesn't impact it. It was, lawful under this resolution. We just don't want to interfere with their current operations. And that seems reasonable to me, and certainly would like to give them time to consult with the Gaming Commission. So I am, recommending that we pull this for this evening, and then when we've had a chance to work on the language, which I don't think they're opposed to the overall intent of the resolution. They just would like to make sure the language won't affect them negatively for their current operations.
Who
Then we'll
called
bring
you
it back
about
to
it?
you.
Who was the attorney?
Mr. Michaeli, who was here this past summer when we considered the application for the Talon Drive location. So that's the reason behind that. So I'd ask that be removed from the consent agenda and that we just table it for a later date.
Okay.
The other items that I've placed on there is item E on the consent agenda, the MOU between the county and the town of Bar None. I sent that out, I think, last week. Are there any questions or concerns with what's in that? I didn't get anything back, so I'm assuming they're.
No, I think that's really good. And I think that's something that's going to be greatly appreciated by everybody that's involved with that. And at the meeting we had last week, we had a regional water meeting last week instead of this week, and everything's moving along, so that's good.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Heather, I reviewed it. It looks great. I don't see really much of any risk or liability to the county. I see some clear obligations, bar none. I think it's in good shape. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Then I had sent out, and I realized it was super long, the Alcova engineering contract and the scope of services. And Michael Brown provided a memo on that. Any questions or concerns about that contract that anybody saw? Okay. And then the other one that I think
This money, if this is paid through the dedicated VR funding account.
Yes, it is.
Through the lake.
It's lake funds, yes.
And then I think the only other item on there came from Mr. Hagler, and that's the agreement between the county and WLC for the Strohecker Road. And any questions or concerns about that? He's probably better equipped to address that, but I certainly reviewed it and placed it on the agenda. So if there's any concerns, I'll try to answer any questions. So that's all I have for the agenda review. I think we've talked about the other items. So that's all I have for you.
Okay. All right, then we'll stand adjourned for about 25 minutes.
We can't start it early?
No.